The third Saturday in a row my neighbor's kids tore through my vegetable garden. I didn't even bother opening the back door. I just stood there at my kitchen window with my coffee in my hand and watched one of them kick mulch across my pepper bed like he was running bases at Little League, and I remember thinking, okay, this is either where I finally lose my temper or where I stop talking and start documenting everything. Funny thing is, if you'd asked me a month earlier whether tomatoes and zucchini could somehow end up in front of a judge, I would have laughed in your face. My name's Caleb Warren. I live in Maple Creek, Tennessee, outside Nashville, in one of those quiet neighborhoods where every house looks a little too neat. Everybody waves from their driveway, and somehow everyone still knows way more about each other than they should. I bought my place 7 years ago after my dad passed, and the backyard became my thing. My reset button. I built raised cedar beds by hand the first spring after moving in. Spent weekends laying irrigation. Learned how the sun crossed that fence line by month. Kept notes. Real notes. Soil temperature, harvest weights, fertilizer timing, which tomato varieties held up best through heat. Some guys golf. Some fish. I grew vegetables and minded my own business. Then Shannon Keller moved in next door last year with her 2 boys Logan and Mason. Nice enough at first. Busy. Always moving. Always looked like she had somewhere else to be. The boys had unlimited energy and no volume control, but honestly that never bothered me. They were kids. The issue was her side gate. It sat between our backyards, and the latch never fully caught. First week she moved in, she joked about it, while dragging patio chairs outside. This thing drives me crazy, she said. I'm fixing it Saturday. Saturday came and went. Then another. Then months. I noticed because every time the wind picked up, that gate tapped lightly against the post. Not wide open, just enough to remind you it wasn't secure. First weekend it happened. I was trimming tomato vines near the back bed when both boys came charging through full speed. They couldn't have been more than 8 and 10. Logan cut left, Mason cut right, and before either realized where they were, they'd stomped through 2 tomato rows and snapped 3 branches clean off. They froze. I froze. For a second we all just stared at each other. Then they bolted back through the gate like squirrels. I looked down and saw tomatoes knocked loose into the dirt and one cage leaning sideways. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to sting. I walked next door and knocked. Shannon answered with her phone tucked between shoulder and ear. I kept it easy. Hey, your boys came through the gate and hit some of the garden. Could you fix that latch when you get a chance? She looked embarrassed immediately. Covered the phone. Oh wow, seriously? I'm so sorry. Absolutely. Fair enough. I believed her. I spent the afternoon tying stems back upright and moved on. Then the next weekend came. Sunday around noon. I heard footsteps before I saw anything and had this weird sinking feeling in my chest. Same gate. Same route. This time, Mason yanked an entire zucchini plant straight out of the soil and dropped it like it meant nothing. That one hit different. You spend weeks getting something healthy and rooted, then somebody rips it free in 3 seconds and leaves it lying there. I knocked again. Shannon opened the door halfway. Different energy this time. No apology on her face before I even spoke. I told her what happened. She sighed and leaned against the frame. Caleb, they're boys. They were running around. I understand, I said. That's why I'm asking again about the gate. Kids make mistakes. I remember looking at her and hearing that sentence and suddenly feeling very calm. Not angry, just sharp. Once is a mistake. Same gate, same warning, same damage. That stops feeling accidental. She narrowed her eyes. You serious right now? I'm serious about the gate. She gave this dry little laugh. You're acting like this is some major property dispute. No, I said. I'm acting like I'd like you to fix a latch before your kids destroy another bed. That landed badly. Wow, she snapped. Okay. Then she shut the door. And maybe that should have been the moment I filed something. Maybe I should have trusted my gut. But I didn't. Because deep down I still thought adults usually cool off and handle obvious stuff eventually. Monday came. Gate still loose. Tuesday same. Wednesday evening, I watered tomatoes and heard it tapping lightly against the frame in the breeze. Thursday I saw Logan push it open without even touching the handle. Friday night, I had this weird pressure sitting in my chest I couldn't shake. Like waiting for thunder when the sky hasn't darkened yet, but somehow you know it's coming. Saturday morning, I made coffee and stood in the kitchen while sunlight came across the beds. Everything looked peaceful. Basil bright green. Tomatoes heavy. Pepper leaves moving in the breeze. Then I heard it. That soft metallic click, followed by the gate swinging inward. Logan came flying through first, Mason right behind him laughing, and before either one hit the mulch path, I reached for my phone instead of the back door. I pulled my phone up almost without thinking and started recording before my brain fully caught up with what I was doing. Logan cut straight through the herb border. Mason tried jumping over one of the zucchini beds and landed right in the middle of it. Mulch flew. A pepper cage tipped sideways. I caught the gate hanging open behind them, both boys mid-stride. Then Logan looked toward the kitchen window and saw me standing there. His face changed instantly. He yelled something to his brother, and they both took off back through the fence. Just like that, gone. The yard went dead quiet. I stood there another second listening to my refrigerator hum and my coffee maker click off, then walked outside slowly. One pepper plant bent almost flat, basil crushed, irrigation tubing pulled loose, and spraying a thin stream sideways into the mulch. The zucchini bed looked like somebody had stomped through it wearing cleats. I crouched down and pinched a broken stem between my fingers, and I actually laughed under my breath because it had gotten so ridiculous it wrapped around and became absurd. 3 weekends. Same gate. Same warning. Same ending. 15 minutes later, Shannon was out front watering hanging plants when I walked up her driveway. She saw me and immediately rolled her eyes before I even opened my mouth. That told me exactly where this conversation was headed. "Please tell me this isn't about the garden again," she said. "It is," I answered. I recorded it. That made her pause. Not much. Just enough. Then she shrugged. "Okay. Your boys came through the gate again. They were playing. And damaging my property." She set the hose down. "Caleb, I'm not doing this every weekend. Neither am I." That hit a nerve. You know what? They're children. They run around. They weren't trying to ruin anything. That gate has been broken for months. It's a gate. It's access to my yard. She folded her arms. "This is unbelievable. You were told twice. And you're acting like they committed vandalism over vegetables." I looked at her and said the one thing I'd been holding back. "Shannon, if the same thing keeps happening because you won't fix the same obvious problem, at some point it stops being accidental." Her face hardened immediately. "Wow. I'm serious. No, you're petty." Then she picked up the watering can and turned her back on me like the conversation was over. And honestly, that was the cleanest moment of the entire thing, because once she did that, my brain got very simple. No more debating. No more benefit of the doubt. No more hoping people suddenly choose responsibility because you asked nicely enough. I went inside, opened the kitchen drawer where I keep my garden notebook, and spent most of the afternoon building a damage list. Receipts from Green Hollow Nursery. Pepper seedlings. Roma tomato starts. Basil trays. Soil amendments. Replacement irrigation parts. Mulch. I cross-checked current prices online. Added notes. Compared damaged plants to previous growth stages. It came out to $392. I checked it twice because that number felt weirdly specific and I wanted it airtight. Then I printed photos with timestamps and mailed everything certified with a 14-day payment request. I wasn't trying to threaten her. I wasn't trying to win. I just wanted accountability. 5 days later, I found a folded note in my mailbox. No envelope. No stamp. Her handwriting. It read, "This is ridiculous. Kids shouldn't be punished for accidents. Please stop escalating something this minor." I stood there in the driveway reading it, and felt this weird calm settle over me. Because she'd written exactly what she'd been saying out loud, and now it was on paper. My next door across the street neighbor, an older retired electrician named Marty, happened to be dragging his trash bins in. He saw the look on my face and asked what happened. I handed him the note. He read it and let out one sharp laugh. "Well," he said, handing it back, "that's one heck of an exhibit." And he was right. So I filed. Small Claims Court in Maple Creek sits in a low brick municipal building with fluorescent lights and chairs that feel designed to make everybody uncomfortable on purpose. Shannon arrived late wearing sunglasses and carrying a giant iced coffee like she was squeezing this hearing in between errands. She looked irritated. Not nervous. Irritated. Like she couldn't believe she actually had to be there. I had a folder under my arm. Photos. Timeline. Receipts. Certified mail documentation. Her note. Judge Raymond Ellis handled the hearing. Mid-60s. Gray hair. Quiet voice. The kind of person who barely raises his head, and somehow the whole room still goes silent. He started with Shannon. She gave exactly the argument I expected. My boys were running around. They're kids. Caleb's trying to charge me nearly $400 over a garden. This got blown way out of proportion. Judge Ellis nodded and turned to me. I handed him the folder. He went through every photo carefully. The first weekend damage. The second. Then the video stills from weekend 3. Gate hanging open. Boys running through. Damaged beds. Then he read her handwritten note and asked one simple question. Miss Keller, were you informed prior to the third incident that the gate latch was broken? She shifted. Yes, but twice. Yes. Was it repaired before the third incident? Silence. Then, no, he nodded once and folded his hands. Children make mistakes, he said calmly. Shannon immediately jumped in. Exactly. Then he looked directly at her and continued. Adults, however, remain responsible for hazards they've been made aware of and choose not to address. The room got quiet enough I could hear somebody turning pages near the clerk desk. Shannon tried interrupting. It was vegetables. Judge Ellis lifted one hand. This court is not determining whether vegetables matter more or less than another property type. The issue is repeated property damage after documented notice involving an unresolved access point under homeowner control. Then he looked at me and said, damages are supported. He awarded the full $392, plus filing costs. Shannon's expression changed so fast it almost didn't register. First disbelief, then anger, then embarrassment. She gripped the iced coffee cup so hard the lid popped loose and spilled on her hand. But the bigger twist didn't happen in court. It happened 4 days later. Because Maple Creek HOA policy automatically reviews court filings involving exterior property disputes between neighbors. I'd completely forgotten that rule existed. Until Wednesday afternoon when I saw a white HOA compliance SUV pull into Shannon's driveway and an inspector walk straight toward that gate with a clipboard in hand. I'll be honest with you, seeing that HOA compliance vehicle pull up outside Shannon's house felt stranger than hearing the judge rule in my favor. Court made sense. You bring evidence, you answer questions, somebody decides. Simple. But watching a compliance officer in a Navy windbreaker step out of that SUV with a clipboard and head straight for the exact side gate I'd pointed at for weeks, that felt different. Because suddenly the thing I'd been told over and over was not a big deal had become official enough for somebody else to inspect it with photos and documentation and a formal checklist. I stood in my kitchen pretending to rinse a glass while watching through the window. The officer tested the latch once. Then again, he pushed the gate inward, and it swung halfway open without resistance. Shannon was standing there beside him with her arms folded tight, trying to explain something while nodding too fast. He wrote notes, took photos, checked the hinge, tugged the frame. Then he said something I couldn't hear clearly, but I heard enough. Immediate correction. That part carried. Shannon's face changed. And I don't mean angry. I mean the kind of expression people get when they realize they've crossed the point where brushing something off is no longer an option. By Thursday afternoon, a contractor truck was parked in front of her place. Full replacement. New latch hardware. Reinforced post bracket. Fresh screws. They realigned the frame and tested it 3 times before packing up. And when that gate shut the final time, it made this sharp, clean metallic click that somehow sounded louder than anything else on the block. That sound stuck with me. Still does. Because for over a month I'd listened to that loose latch tap lightly in the wind like a warning nobody wanted to hear. Then one court filing later, solid. Fixed. Quiet. After that the boys never crossed again. Not once. A few times I saw Logan and Mason playing football near the fence and both of them instinctively stopped a few feet short like there was an invisible line there now. Which honestly made me think they understood boundaries faster than adults ever do. Shannon and I settled into that weird suburban silence neighbors pretend isn't awkward. Quick nods while checking mail. Looking busy when pulling into the driveway at the same time. No conversation unless absolutely necessary. Then one evening in late August, I was hauling a basket of tomatoes toward the porch when she happened to be unloading groceries. She glanced toward the garden and said, "Looks like it survived." Just like that. Flat tone. No apology. No smile. I set the basket down and looked over. Yeah, I said. Actually had a better season than expected. There was probably a little edge in my voice. Maybe more than necessary. But after everything, I gave myself that one. She nodded once and shut her trunk. End scene. And the truth is, The garden really did bounce back stronger. The peppers exploded late summer. Basil doubled in size. The tomatoes were ridiculous heavy enough I had to reinforce cages twice. The zucchini came back like it had something personal to prove. I ended up giving produce away to Marty across the street and a retired couple down near the mailbox cluster because there was no way I could eat through all of it myself. Every Sunday I'd walk the beds with my notebook, checking moisture, trimming leaves, tracking harvest totals like always, and by mid-September I realized I was looking at the best yield I'd ever had in that backyard, which felt strangely poetic. The thing that got trampled 3 weekends in a row somehow turned into the strongest season on record. One night near sunset, I sat in a folding chair beside the herb bed with a glass of iced tea and just listened. Bees in the rosemary, waterline ticking softly, leaves moving against each other in the breeze. The fence glowing orange in the last light. Peaceful again. And sitting there I kept thinking how neighborhood conflicts almost never stay about the thing they start with. It wasn't really tomatoes, or basil, or even the money. $392 mattered, sure. Filing fees mattered. But that wasn't what sat heavy in my chest every weekend. It was being dismissed. Being told repeatedly to relax while somebody ignored something simple and expected me to absorb the consequences because pushing back felt inconvenient. That part sticks with you. The quiet assumption that eventually you'll just stop bringing it up because you don't want tension. And sometimes maybe that works. Sometimes you shrug and replant and move on. But sometimes, if you keep swallowing irritation to keep the peace, all you're really doing is teaching people where your line is and how easily they can step over it. I still think about what Judge Ellis said in court. After documented notice, repeated damage tied to an unresolved hazard is no longer accidental. Hearing somebody neutral say that out loud landed harder than I expected. Because deep down that was exactly it. It stopped being about kids running around after weekend 1. After that it became a choice. A simple repair ignored long enough to become everyone's problem. And honestly, I don't hate Shannon. I really don't. I think she got embarrassed, then defensive, then trapped by her own pride. Happens all the time. The longer something sits unresolved, the harder it feels to back up and admit you should have fixed it at the start. Neighborhood pride gets expensive fast. But every single time I hear that latch click shut now, I notice it. Just for a second. That little sharp metallic snap. And I smile. Not because she lost. Not because I won. Just because boundaries finally became real. So I'm curious, what would you have done? First weekend, would you have brushed it off? Second warning, would you have filed immediately? Third weekend, would you have knocked one last time or gone straight to court like I did? Around here people are split. Marty says I waited too long. My sister says she would have filed after the first broken tomato stem. A few neighbors quietly think dragging vegetables into court was ridiculous. Maybe they're right. Maybe not. I still go back and forth depending on the day. But I know this much. The garden had its best season I've ever recorded. The fence line stayed respected, and nobody crossed through that gate again. So tell me down below, was I protecting my property, or did I take it too far?